Good evening and welcome to NTV Tonight. Our top story, the Minister of Finance has today read the national budget to the Ugandans for the financial year 2025-2026. The total resource envelope stands at 72.37 trillion, a marginal increase of 0.3% from 72.1 trillion in the 2024-2025 financial year. Now, meanwhile, across the world, tragedy is stuck in India, where an Air India passenger plane bound for London crashed into a medical college shortly after takeoff in the northwestern city of Ahmedabad. More than 240 people were on board. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko, and our sign language interpreter is Susan Mujananda. Here are the headlines.
NTV Tonight, brought to you by
TFC, going further together.
Tonight,
told these people to do the number plates, maybe recover the money from those who make mistakes.
President Museveni defends digital number plates in budget speech. He says they were introduced to address security issues and not as a means to collect road fines.
The growth is...
Brace yourselves. Government to widen its tax base, a substantial amount of the financial year 2025-2026 budget set to go to debt service. Also on NTV Tonight, Uganda once again falls short of its continental commitments to prioritize critical sectors like health, education and agriculture in the financial year 2025-2026 budget.
Amount of money available for you is far less. You are actually struggling.
And economists warn that impulse expenditure to deliver on past campaign promises could come at a cost. This as they weigh in on the financial year 2025-2026 budget.
TFC, going further together.
This is NTV Tonight.
You're watching NTV Tonight with me, Jerome Paul Sonko, and Susan Mujananda on sign language. And so it begins. President Museveni has clarified that the introduction of digital number plates in the country is intended to enhance security, not to facilitate the collection of road fines. He said people may have misunderstood the purpose of the system. His remarks come in the wake of public outcry over the government's recent decision to impose strict penalties on road traffic offenders, which prompted the Ministry of Works and Transport to suspend the rollout of the new system. Museveni made these comments while addressing leaders gathered for the presentation of the 2025-2026 national budget.
Today, the president met different leaders at the Kololo ceremonial grounds, who included ministers, members of parliament, among other dignitaries, for the 2025-2026 budget speech.
We have to...
While speaking to these leaders, Museveni condemned the use of the digital number plates as a basis upon which they are issuing harsh automated express penalties among road rules violators, saying the number plates were brought in the country to address issues of criminality.
Of the digital number plates, not collecting fines and so on. I think the confusion about fines could be because we didn't have money and we told these people to do the number plates, maybe recover the money from those who make mistakes, fines. I don't know, I think that's where the confusion started.
The president says that the CCTVs have been able to help in addressing the investigations in some of the criminality in the country.
Number plate, traceable by the central machinery, central command, to know which pikis were in this area at this time, which cars were in this area. These number plates which are put on and put off, these are meaningless. This is the whole thing about the digital number plates. It's not about money, fines, what, no. It's about security.
He also urged the ordinary citizens against soliciting for funds from politicians through fundraising and voter bribery, that this denies them the opportunity to task leaders to demand for oversight of government programs.
Do not accept petty money from politicians and throw away your power to elect a leader that can kwemerera. Kwemerera is the Nyankore word to supervise the money sent to you through the parish or to fight corruption in your area. This is the Uganda word. It summarizes the whole thing. Stop trying to be like the one who is bigger than you. You tell those people that Museveni gives the envelope because he has got a budget. He's president. I'm not president. Why do you want?
Museveni promised to go for district leaders who are misusing road funds worth 1.3 billion shillings, which is sent to them for rehabilitating area roads.
The districts doing with the 1.3 billion shillings you are sending to them. What is happening? I'm now going to send my spies quietly to check on some of these roads. And once I find the road is not worked on, and yet the government people are there, the cow is there, it's quiet, the diesel is there, the diesels are there, I will go for them.
He says if the energies are focused on fighting political corruption, it will be easier to deal with the corrupt civil servants. Juma Kiria, NTV.
Now, the government has unveiled a 72.3 trillion shillings budget for the 2025-2026 financial year, with a significant portion earmarked for debt servicing. This has raised concerns about the need to expand the country's tax base. However, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija has downplayed fears over Uganda's debt burden, insisting it remains within manageable levels. He also expressed confidence in the country's economic resilience, projecting a growth rate of at least 7% despite ongoing global uncertainties. We have details.
The national budget for the 2025-2026 financial year has been set at 72.3 trillion, representing an increase of 0.3% compared to the current financial year's budget of 72.1 trillion shillings. Presenting the budget highlights, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija announced that human capital development will receive the largest allocation at 11.4 trillion shillings, followed by governance and security at 9.8 trillion, while development plan implementation will receive 2.7 trillion shillings, among other sectors. In a bid to reduce reliance on external borrowing, government targets to collect 37.5 trillion in domestic revenue. Of this, 33.94 trillion is expected from tax revenues, 3.28 trillion from non-tax revenues, and 328.6 billion shillings from local government collections. However, meeting this target could prove challenging for the Uganda Revenue Authority, given persistent shortfalls in revenue collection in previous years. Approximately 27 trillion of the projected revenue will go towards debt repayment, leaving limited fiscal space to fund other priorities in the budget. To bridge the gap, government plans to raise an additional 11.3 trillion through domestic borrowing and about 2 trillion from grants and external budget support and 11.3 trillion through external project financing, including 2.8 trillion in grants.
Government has stepped up efforts to mobilize domestic revenue. Going forward, emphasis will be put on the following. 1. Broadening the tax base through strategic investment in the opportunities in agro-industry, tourism, minerals, including oil and gas, science, technology, and innovation, including ICT, as well as interventions that support wealth creation and the growth of small and medium enterprises.
Uganda's public debt stock is projected to reach 116 trillion shillings by the end of June 2025, comprising 56.3 trillion in external debt and 59.7 trillion shillings in domestic debt. Despite growing concerns over rising debt levels, he reassured the public that the country's debt remains sustainable and not a cause for panic. Kasaija further emphasized that the economy remains resilient and is expected to grow by at least 7% in the 2025-2026 financial year, with a potential to reach double-digit growth when oil and gas production begins. The economy is projected to expand to 254.2 trillion, translating into a GDP per capita of $1,324, up from $1,263 in the current financial year, ending 30th June 2025. According to the minister, inflation has continued to ease, falling to 3.4% in May 2025, down from 4.1% during the same period last year. Inflation is expected to remain below the Bank of Uganda's target of 5% per annum.
Our economy has strengthened its resilience to domestic and external shocks and is estimated to grow by 6.3% this financial year 24-25. This is after recording growth of 8.6% in the third quarter of this financial year.
Norbert Atkunda, NTV News.
Now, that reporting forms the basis of our poll question tonight. We're asking you to share your thoughts on the financial year 2025-2026 budget presented today by the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija. What are your thoughts on the financial year 2025-26 budget presented today by the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija? You can go into X and Facebook at NTV Uganda and share your feedback with us. I'll be sampling your feedback, some of your feedback, later on in the bulletin. Moving on, following the reading of the national budget for the financial year 2025-26 at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds, Uganda has once again fallen short of its continental commitments to prioritize critical sectors like health, education and agriculture. Despite repeated pledges under the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Programme, CADIP, to allocate at least 10% of the national budget to agriculture, the Abuja Declaration to dedicate 15% to health, and the Dakar and Maputo commitments advocating for at least 20% to education and agriculture development, Uganda's allocations remain below its commitments. As some analysts note that these frameworks are just seen as guidelines, others note that this raises fresh concerns about the country's capacity to meet its development goals and the well-being of its population. Rona Nahawe has more.
Uganda, just like many other African governments, has signed onto frameworks like CADIP, the Maputo and Abuja declarations, pledging to allocate specific portions of the national budget to critical areas like health, education and agriculture. Yet, just like in the previous years, this budget has fallen short. We spoke to experts to understand why these pledges remain unmet.
The case is we don't have the money to allocate. The fact that Uganda signed is because you are part of the global template. It could be a UN ambition. And we usually call it an ambition. It's an outline of a plan that anybody will say, I wish I had money, I could do the following. So these are global templates as guidance. But the realities on the ground have got to come through what money do I have and what obligation do I have.
Out of the 72 trillion shillings, 26.83 trillion, which is 37.2%, will be going to debt servicing. And this is why critical sectors like health, agriculture and education are still getting below their committed to portions. In this budget, health has been allocated 5.87 trillion shillings, education 5.4 trillion shillings, and social protection 404.9 billion shillings, all still below the targets set in the mission international commitments.
They are going to tell you we have money here, we have money this side, and they are all contributing to the agricultural sector. So, and when they calculate that money, you find that they are surpassing the 10%. But the issue is, are those development, they call it ministries, departments and agencies, really deliver to the objectives of the sector?
For example, UPE schools, the money allocated per student, it was previously something like 8,000. Officially, they increased it to 20,000 per child per annum. But up to now, we haven't fully realized that. So 20,000 shillings, what can it do in order for you to celebrate and say we have allocated enough money to increase free education? That one is not yet realistic.
At least there are those that are trying. You see countries like Rwanda. Rwanda has really done so well. Allocate like 6, something like that. But for us, we have never even gone beyond 5. So that defeats every time we go for those meetings and we commit, we shall have 15% in health, have 10% in agriculture. But back home, when we plan, it doesn't come out well. That means maybe, I don't want to say we are wasting time, because those are also important platforms. But I think we need to really pull up our stockings when it comes to financing these sectors that we feel are so critical to our people.
Some economists, however, suggest a revision of these ambitious targets since they continuously remain unmet.
And it will be good for them to actually say, in light of what has transpired, let us revise our aspirations of 20 years ago. Because some of these things were put out there 20 years ago. Countries were not what they are today. A lot has happened. Even we have seen the Europeans who had pledged to give a certain percentage under overseas development assistance, cutting their own.
Another key commitment is around climate change adaptation, where Uganda is expected to commit 30% of its national resources to find climate change.
526 budget lands at a politically sensitive time, the final year of the current government, with general elections due in January 2026. The ruling National Resistance Movement does appear to be racing to deliver on past campaign promises, but the economists warn this could come at a cost. Betty Ndagire has details to this story.
This is not just any budget, it's an election year. With elections on the horizon, there are already signs that budgeting could be intended to appeal to the electorate, with spending ramped up on road construction and domestic debt servicing. According to civil society, more populist items could be added as President Museveni seeks another term.
63% of the entire budget is going to be funded by borrowing and elsewhere. It means that the amount of money available for you is far less. You are actually struggling to pay debts, because the biggest percentage of our money, around 34%, is around debt servicing. And that's going to be a constraint, especially as we enter into elections. I think we should have that at the back of our mind, because at the back of our elections, the expenditure increases because people need to deliver the things they have not delivered for the last 4 years. Government is trying to cure that by borrowing domestically. In fact, we are seeing that 60% of the funds that the government is going to borrow is from a non-consensual. An indication that they are going to be getting quick money to fix problems very quickly. How then are we likely to see implementation next financial year? I think probably I'm going to see more of contractors not being paid because of the constraints that we are going to have. We are likely to see a number of services probably reduced because we might not have enough resources. If we don't see that, we will see increased borrowing to address this gap, and that is really borrowing for short term, which doesn't help us. Ordinarily, what the government should be doing should have been, one, expand the tax base, which it is doing, and that's commendable. More importantly, cut your expenditure, especially on those items that you don't consider very key and very important.
The civil society is also concerned that, despite the rationalization efforts meant to cut costs by merging and dissolving some agencies, key budgeting consuming institutions like the Judicial Service Commission and the Ministry of Public Service were left largely untouched.
Yes, we achieved RAPEX rationalization, but I think we left the bigger culprits, because you can't tell me that rationalization was supposed to deal with duplication and mandates, and you leave institutions like Uganda Public Service Commission, you leave the Health Service Commission, you leave Judicial Service Commission, the prisoners have their own, then the military. All these are recruiting Ugandans, and yet nobody would have done that. Could actually go into those ones and further be able to rationalize and ensure that we avoid duplication and wasting the public resources.
Uganda continues to grapple with funding of its national budget, managing to cover only 47% from the domestic resources, with the lion's share going towards debt servicing. as the country presses its bets on agriculture, tourism, mineral development and science. ATMA's only time will tell whether this strategic focus will yield the ambitious tenfold returns it promises. Betty Ndagire, NTV Tonight.
Meanwhile, the government of Uganda has also allocated 1.3 trillion shillings this financial year to finance sports infrastructure development in the country in preparation for the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations finals that Uganda will co-host with Kenya and Tanzania. At the 2025-26 national budget presentation, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija indicated that the government spent 496.8 billion, that is last year, on the construction of Hoima and Akibua stadiums. The money also went into putting up various training grounds across the country. This is also in preparation for the upcoming CHAN tournament due in August this very year.
Uganda's efforts to co-host CHAN 2025 and AFCON 2027 received a huge financial boost this afternoon with the allocation of 1.3 trillion shillings to facilitate sports infrastructure development in the country. Reading the 72.3 trillion budget for the financial year 2025-26, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija announced that the sports allocation will go into the completion of the Hoima and Akibua stadiums. The money will also see the start of Phase 2 of the Nelson Mandela National Stadium upgrade.
In preparation for CHAN and AFCON 27, government has so far spent shillings 496.8 billion for the construction of Hoima and Akibua Stadia, as well as the associated training facilities across the country. Government will spend a total of shillings 1.3 trillion to get these facilities completed. In addition, Mandela National Stadium has been upgraded and government commissioned the National High Altitude Training Center in Kapchorwa.
The Hoima Stadium is expected to be handed over to Uganda by Suma Construction by the end of the year, as construction is progressing at full speed to beat the deadline. The stadium is expected to be a 25,000-seater. In Lira, the Akibua Stadium construction is not moving as fast, but the stadium is expected to be ready by the time AFCON 2027 kicks off. The two multi-purpose 2027 AFCON venues are expected to have a running track, swimming pool and outdoor courts. Felix Manyindo, NTV Sport.
You are still watching NTV Tonight. Now we do take a short break, but here's still to come and more stories on the way. Still to come. Analysts express divergent viewpoints on Uganda's 2025-26 budget, say it presents a mixed outlook for local businesses. And Works Ministry announces that traditional methods of police officers maintaining road safety will be reinstated. This after the suspension of the automated express penalty system by the same ministry yesterday due to public outcry.
Did you know that the first C-section operation was done in Uganda? And now, in every corner, from hair dryers, banana fiber extensions, a cow tail shoe brush, a stick computers, and many more. This June, the spotlight is on you. The National Science Week 2025 is here from the 15th to 20th June 2025 at Kololo Independence Ground. Entrance is free to all. Made in Uganda. Innovation to market. This message is brought to you by Science, Technology and Innovation Secretariat.
The same great cube that makes your beans tasty, now in a new pack. Get the Royco Cube Co-String at a Duka or supermarket near you. Just pull, tear, and crumble for the tastiest beans.
against the stream.
Uniquely ours. Explore Uganda.
I've got a plan to handle missiles like a boss. So even when things get out of control, I'm always in the driver's seat.
ICEA Lion has a plan for everyone. ICEA Lion, what's your plan?
Elevate your experience at Protea Hotel by Marriott Kampala Skies. Wake up to breathtaking city views from our luxurious suites. Indulge in sumptuous buffets and world-class cuisine. Host seamless events in our spacious conference facilities and toast to the skyline with signature cocktails. For unforgettable stay, visit Protea Hotel by Marriott Kampala Skies.
Get the always extra long maxi pad, giving your heavy flow 3 times better protection. Available in stores near you now at 3,000 shillings.
That's me having the worst day ever. But then I saw them and I knew my besties were both going through it. And that's when I had an idea. That's OT. The socials are having him right now, but not for long. And that's Chico, certified stress girly and goated producer. So we get to the spot, and what do these guys do? And just like that, I was having the best day ever. Sharing a Coke with my faves. Who will you share a Coke with?
Uniquely ours. Explore Uganda.
This is NTV Tonight.
Opinion Poll is brought to you by ICEA Lion. What's your plan?
Welcome back from the break. You're still watching NTV Tonight. Now, earlier on, we did ask you to share your thoughts on the financial year 2025-2026 budget presented today by the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija. The conversations are online on X, Facebook, and the website. Now, we start off with Mbabali William, who says, my worries about our increasing debts. Is there any repayment plan? Thanks, NTV. Thank you, Mbabali William, for your point. And then Isaac Wanzaks Aizo says, that's still worrying and how to pay them. A common Ugandan gonna suffer, he says. Thank you, Isaac, for that opinion. Then we have Rain David at I am Rain David on X. He says, it emphasizes domestic revenue, approximately 36 trillion Ugandan shillings, but relies heavily on borrowing, 48.1%. Strength include growth projections and sector focus, but challenges like implementation gaps, corruption, and debt risks threaten success, he says. Then lastly, we end with Kemjisha Zoe, who says the budget was a reflection of a resilient economy and committed government actions, all geared towards the transformation of society. Hashtag NTV Poll. The conversation do continue online. The hashtag is NTV Poll, hashtag NTV Tonight, hashtag NTV News.
so he can become a future CEO.
Hey, Dad.
And pay for my retirement. ICEA Lion has a plan for everyone. ICEA Lion, what's your plan?
Moving on, analysts contend that Uganda's 2025-26 budget presents a mixed outlook for local businesses. While investments in the sectors like infrastructure and oil and gas are expected to benefit, other areas, including the private sector, may face challenges due to reduced funding and possible underperformance. Furthermore, analysts suggest that although the country's budget is ambitious, the true implications become clearer once the specific allocation of funds is considered, with sectors that drive economic growth such as agro-industrialization, tourism and mining not receiving sufficient investment. Despite their potential, the analysts contend that addressing the trade deficit in these key sectors requires focused industrialization efforts to promote value addition and sustainable growth.
Growth is on our...
Uganda's 2025-2026 national budget, totaling Uganda shillings 72.3 trillion, seeks to strike a balance between fiscal discipline and economic growth. However, budget analysts offer a nuanced perspective on this financial plan. While certain sectors such as infrastructure and oil and gas are poised to benefit from increased funding, others, including the private sector, may encounter hurdles due to limited resources and potential underperformance.
From a risk perspective, obviously, oil and gas is much more complex. Taxation of oil and gas is much more complex. You're looking at the possibility of local entities being outcompeted by incoming foreign direct investors in the oil and gas sector. Obviously, if you don't have access to sufficient capital, then a much more financially able entity coming into Uganda to participate in the oil and gas sector will outbid you on the bulk of the opportunities.
Some experts note that despite the ambitious overall budget, the effectiveness hinges on how resources are allocated. Current allocations to sectors like agro-industrialization, tourism and mining appear underwhelming, especially given their importance as economic drivers.
What is our comparative advantage? Shouldn't we invest more in agro-industrialization, although we're in the digital age, but also considering our comparative and competitive advantage, we have to position ourselves accordingly, because while China is manufacturing electric vehicles, Tesla is also, out there. So are we going to compete with Tesla? Are we going to compete with China? I know we are playing catch-up. We are late in terms of the digital industrialization, but also we should approach it based on our context, realities, aspirations, and also be able to put our resources where we will get value for money, because we have meager resources. We don't have too much to spend.
Another critical point raised by analysts concerns revenue mobilization. Of the Uganda shillings 72 trillion budget, approximately Uganda shillings 38 trillion is expected to come from domestic sources. However, a significant portion of this, nearly Uganda shillings 28 trillion, is allocated to debt servicing. This heavy debt burden limits fiscal space and diverts resources that could otherwise be invested in development.
Whereas we are talking about that, we are entrapped into a vicious cycle of debt. The debt servicing obligations will go up to 28 trillion. 28 trillion is a huge figure that we cannot take lightly. The debt servicing obligations are actually depriving us of the much needed resources to be invested in critical social sectors.
While the budget aims to be largely self-financed through domestic revenue and limited external borrowing, its success depends on effective implementation and prioritization.
So since there will be more money that will be put into oil and gas, so we shall see now companies in the private sector, and these are citizens of the country. So they have businesses. Since the oil and gas sector is coming up, so there will be so many opportunities supply and chain contracts, engineering contracts, supply contracts, logistics, and because of this now we have more, we usually call them complementary services or ancillary services. So there are so many small other businesses that can come and tap into other sectors like accommodation, we have tourism, hospitality, ICT. So
David Ijo, NTV.
Thank you, David. Today, the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija, read the 2025-26 budget during a ceremony at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds. However, the opposition says that the 72 trillion shillings budget does not reflect the economy's current state. The country is drowning in debt and facing other challenges that leave the average citizen worried about the future. Joan Salmon reports.
Was presented to the public. However, the opposition says 55 trillion shillings is sufficient because they feel that the budget is like the president and his people behaving like the elders of old who enjoyed all the niceties while giving the children a small bubble of rice, yet complaining why they seem dissatisfied. Why is there such a disparity and what is pushing this budget upwards?
The 72 trillion budget in our proposal is just exaggerated for purposes of creating an impression that we are growing. First, URA has consistently been correcting 24 trillion, 25, sometimes 26. So the corrections are growing by 1 trillion, maximum 2 trillion. Now they create an impression that they are going to grow by about 7 trillion. It has never happened by 20s. Even if you go back to 2021, 2023, 2024, URA corrections grow maximum by 2 trillion. Sometimes they grow by 1 trillion. So the tax component of the budget will not be met. These fellows you will see walking with the bags that they have brought a budget. Actually, they are bringing air. The actual money is not there. That's why suppliers are crying they haven't been paid. Because URA has no capacity, this economy has no capacity to generate 37 trillion in taxes.
The president is continually pushing for the commercialization of agriculture, coupled with the new crucial areas of tourism, ICT and mineral extraction. However, one wonders if the budget pie is shared to support the growth of these areas. Moreover, are our market priorities aligned to ensure that our crucial sectors grow?
Dubai decided to build an economy on 3 T's: trade, tourism, transport. All their investment is in those 3 areas. That's why they have Emirates Airline, they start fly Dubai. Another day they have Etihad, creatively putting products on the market to facilitate the 3 T's that they have identified as a country. Here they will identify the areas as agro-processing, tourism, ITC, industry and so on and so forth, and then starve them of money. Because you have 62% of the population in agriculture, but the budget is less than 2 trillion in a budget of 72 trillion. Once you've said you're going to be agro-processing, it means production must be facilitated to go up as high as you can. Because look, we have a factory for fruits in Soroti. The mangoes we are coming from Kenya, I think now at some time they had been closed. We have Atiak sugar factory. It started up to now, they have no canes to go and process sugar. So there is a mismatch between the declared policies and the funding towards those policies. So if we became the food basket for the Middle East, not Kenya, you will see the president very happy that we export milk to Kenya. Kenya will give you less because they can also produce milk. You cannot celebrate exporting to South Sudan, which is under war, Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, which is under war and poor. Because what is the GDP of Congo? What is the GDP of South Sudan and Kenya? Go to Saudi Arabia. They have every day Saudi Arabia makes $1 billion in terms of sales in petroleum. So they have excess money.
Public debt is growing to 106 trillion shillings, a sharp increase from 96 trillion shillings in December 2023. Mr. Semuju points to the issue of human resources, where State House has 650 RDCs, deputies and assistants, not forgetting 90 cooks within the president's home, while Mulago Hospital is working at a meager 49%.
That's why the budget of 72 trillion, 8.5 trillion is for paying wages. And then you have another about 4 trillion, which is for internal travel, buying vehicles, maintaining vehicles, buying fuel, workshops, donation, etc. You are spending about 12 trillion of borrowed money on employees who have no money to use to work. So it's like employing a maid and you are sleeping on the street. There is no food to prepare, no clothes to wash, but you and the maid, you are all sleeping there, all of you beggars. That's what the government does. So the problem with the public debt, first, is that we are borrowing for fun. Each time we hear there's someone lending money, we run there, bring it, it sits on the account. The last time the Auditor General did a report, we had 14 trillion shillings sitting on accounts that we have borrowed and not utilizing. A lot of that money is being borrowed from China. Then annually they correct commitment fees, because for them they committed that the money is available and you're not utilizing it. Then two, if you have, because all the documents of Minister of Finance point to the fact that we borrow money for roads whose visibility study has not been done. Compensation for passage has not been done. Design is not done. I think people there are mad. They are candidates for mental rehabilitation in Butabika. That you continue doing the same things, borrow money, and then in a report on debts and grants in Parliament, you say, sorry, for this particular money we borrowed when there was no design, when there was no visibility study, when there was no money for compensation. Why, for God's sake, do you go and borrow?
Interest rates on debt are also alarming because the government is paying penalties and giving incentives to several parties without a thought to the taxpayers. What is becoming of Uganda's financial state?
This financial year, we have paid interest on money borrowed of 11 trillion. Our revenue projection is 32 trillion. So you correct 32 trillion, 11 goes to pay the interest. The total amount for debt servicing in this budget, in this financial year, which ends end of this month, is 38 trillion. Nearly 46% of your budget is debt servicing. This time I was asking them, whose debt are you paying? On the list you have Democratic Republic of Congo, where we are paying $60 million every year because we went there, raped women, stole gold, stole timber, and we lost that case in the International Court of Justice. So in a budget for the next 5 years, we are going to pay Democratic Republic of Congo 1.1 trillion. Yet the people who committed the crime, Salim Sare, Otafire, and others are here. Why don't you go and sell the property of Otafire and Sare and we pay the debt? Because they are the ones who are plundering Congo. So you pay Congo 1.1 trillion, you pay Roko's debts, you pay Pineti's debt, you pay Atiaka Amina. So until the president stops treating taxpayers' money as his pocket money that he can pick and gives out to people who will continue incurring debt, the human resource is a mess. The policy is good. Implementation is zero. So that's why we are just around the same place, thinking that we will move when we will not move.
Budget constraints are not just due to debt, but also the rampant corruption starting from the highest echelon of power. A turnaround must start with the leadership if we are to see change.
Corruption in Uganda, many people don't understand it. There is official corruption. When we sit in Parliament and allocate money to ourselves and other government people, for me, that is the highest level of corruption, higher than even the stealing itself. I have enumerated to you that you are a member of Parliament, you are a minister, you are what? You pass a budget in which you will buy yourself a car, you will put in the fuel, you will never count how you have used that fuel, whether you have been attending funerals in your constituency or weddings. So even before you go to the actual stealing in the procurement process, first deal with the official corruption. The president himself, in this budget that is ending, he has given himself 1 trillion shilling for his residency. And 500 billion of that 1 trillion is classified. I kept asking, what is classified between the president and his wife, two old people who have no life to live?
Uganda's budget leaves a lot to be desired. While the figures speak of a growing and developing economy, there are several loopholes that are denying the citizens the improvement in public goods that they desire. Joanne Salmon, NTV.
You're still watching NTV Tonight. We take another break, but we do return with more reports. Stick around.
time to wake up. How was your night? Beautiful. Rest from gives a very good morning.
And dreams.
Rest from and rest spring mattresses. The big deal. No morning body pain. Massages you.
You can only sleep like a baby on the highest quality and durable mattress for backaches, overall body pain, resting at its best. You name it, Rose Farm has it all.
Rose Farm, a world of beautiful dreams.
Man, valet took forever.
There's no valet here.
Who took my... That could have been bad.
Mountain Dew. Do the Dew.
If whiskey could talk, Johnny Walker Black Label would sing. With notes that only come with 12 years in a barrel. Sweet, smooth toffee, rich fruit, and touch of smoke. Tastes as good as it sounds.
Yeah, possible.
Looks like whoever drops the ball buys the Pepsi.
Welcome back. NTV Tonight does continue. The Ministry of Works and Transport has announced that traditional methods of police officers maintaining road safety will be reinstated following the suspension of the automated express penalty system by the ministry yesterday due to public outcry. Road safety activists are calling for the government to review the penalty fees, taking into consideration the high levels of poverty in the country in order to ensure that the people are able to maintain their jobs.
Last Friday, the Ministry of Works and Transport rolled out the automated express penalty system aimed at curbing and penalizing road users who violate road regulations such as speeding. Since the rollout, there has been a public outcry over the high penalty fees, the 30-kilometer-hour speed limit in urban centers, among others. As a result, the government yesterday suspended the EPS system to have it reviewed. The suspension was announced on the ministry's website.
The system sometimes issues tickets to individuals that do not match with their vehicle particulars, with their personal particulars. So,
despite the suspension, the Ministry of Works and Transport is currently reinstating the traffic officers on all roads to maintain road safety while the system undergoes review.
So that means that traffic will continue playing its role on the roads. They will continue issuing tickets, but it will be according to the old law. It is the new law that is being looked into.
We asked Susan Kataike about the government waiving of penalties for all those who have received tickets. She had this to say.
A financial model. I think those are issues still that the minister will be able to clarify on.
Road safety activists on their part say the government did not do enough sensitization and consultation with the citizens before rolling out the system nationwide.
Not just reviewing, do the planning. You map out, and after the planning is when you start piloting. Don't pilot on what we call strategic routes. A route to the airport is very sensitive because it has speeding problems. Do the piloting in a few areas, then you get the data, analyze it before you roll out in the whole country.
Regarding the 30-kilometer speed limit in urban centers, road safety advocates say it would have been preferable if Uganda utilized other forms of transport, such as railways and waterways, instead of relying solely on roads to reach destinations.
In built-up areas which are busy, school zones, markets, hospitals, 30 kilometers per hour is the best thing. And in other areas where there is a very low traffic of humans and it's, call it a main road, 50 kilometers per hour is ideal, and that way we will all get home safe.
Sure that 30 works in Uganda. And I would be very glad to see a study that has come up to recommend 30. I was involved in some studies of speeding in some countries, and 30 is a problem in Africa, apart from obviously the Maghreb area, the Mediterranean, and also in Southern Africa where the road infrastructure is developed. But in a developing country like Uganda, where you have no alternative means of transport apart from road, then you have problems.
Many drivers have received penalties ranging from 300,000 shillings to 600,000 shillings or more. According to road safety advocates, these fees do not match the current poverty levels among Ugandans.
Meaning the fines, we look at the income levels. The first thing is, what's the income level of the driver? You have to look at his profit margin when it comes to affordability. So the fines were far high, it's very high, yeah. So
we got a report from Bank of Uganda. Less than 1% of Ugandans were earning 1 million shillings and above. So if you look at somebody is being fined 600,000, it's a little bit too high. We understand and appreciate everything that needs to be done, and this should have been done a long time ago because of the situation on our roads. But at the same time, we need to be realistic.
The promoters of road safety also suggest that the government needs to do better in improving the country's road infrastructure, as many roads have potholes and lack proper signage.
The infrastructure, when you look at it, most of it, apart from a few roads in Kampala, they are primarily designed for vehicles. But if you look at Kampala, more than 50% of the people walk in and out of the city, as you can see. They are not walking for recreation, they are walking out of necessity. So we need infrastructure that is conducive, that is safe for every road user.
Raymond Tamale, NTV.
Away from that, the National Unity Platform, NUP, has made changes to its top leadership following elections held at the party's leadership school yesterday. While key positions including party president, vice president and spokesperson remain unchanged, the role of chairman, previously held by Fred Nyanzi, has been handed over to Habib Buembo. Party spokesperson Joel Senyonyi expressed optimism about the new leadership, noting that it brings renewed energy and commitment to advancing the party's agenda. He also commended the increased involvement of youth in key leadership roles. Lydia Feliakulu has details.
Yesterday, the National Unity Platform, NUP, held an extraordinary delegates conference at its leadership school to elect new top leadership for the party. Over 127 delegates attended. The atmosphere was tense and some candidates stepped down to allow others run unopposed, while a few members openly opposed the entire process. Even journalists were barred from accessing the polling area and had to wait outside the party headquarters with little information about what was happening inside. Despite the tense moments, the election was a success. Party President Robert Chagulanyi and party spokesperson Joel Senyonyi, among other top leaders, retained their positions. However, Fred Nyanzi was replaced as chairperson of the Kunga by Habib Buembo.
But we did see a coming in of some fresh blood, which is a beautiful thing. You know, we are a party of young people, and so it was good to see some young people express interest, and they were trusted by the delegates to execute particular roles.
Senyonyi added that the new leadership reflects geographical diversity and a stronger push for gender equality.
We have tried to make sure we strike that balance so that the entire country sees itself in the leadership of NUP. That can be a challenge because many times you find people in different parts of the country, they'll intimidate them. You cannot associate with the NUP and so on. But we are glad that with time, people feel bold.
Meanwhile, earlier today, candidates from various party positions turned up at the headquarters to collect their nomination forms. Lydia Feliakulu, NTV Tonight.
Greatness isn't given. It's earned. It's the result of your mindset. Relentless. Focused. So when greatness is within reach, you're ready. Rule your kingdom.
This year, Muangulanga Chinna Wolofo.
Amavara ni wadrukti yalirwa kagura rokugumu umibiri na hangura kagali ebintu binu bya mazima munywe.
Color is back. Buy Rockbook. Check out of the cap. What you see is what you win.
Absa Bank Uganda and NTV Uganda will host a high-level post-budget breakfast forum on Friday, 13th June 2025, under the theme, How best can the financial year 2025-2026 national budget be an enabler to business? The dialogue will unpack the implications of the national budget and foster conversation on how its provisions can be best leveraged to enable sustainable private sector growth and economic transformation. The chief guest will be the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Ramadan Gowi. Follow the discussion live on NTV from 8 a.m. and on NTV, Absa Bank Uganda, and Deloitte digital platforms from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Victoria Hall. This is an invite-only event, supported by Absa Bank Uganda and Deloitte.
It's now time for sport. The women's national cricket team, the Victoria Pearls, will tomorrow face Zimbabwe in the semi-final clash of the Kwibuka T20 Women's Tournament in Rwanda. Uganda finished second on the log behind host Rwanda in the round-robin format stage after losing today's game against the host by 5 wickets.
The Victoria Pearls suffered a second loss at this year's Kwibuka T20 Memorial Women's Tournament after going down to hosts Rwanda by 5 wickets at the Gahanga Bay Oval. After losing to Nigeria yesterday, Uganda entered the contest with renewed purpose, producing more composed innings that saw them post 119 runs for the loss of 6 wickets in 20 overs.
You know, they bounced back nicely from yesterday in terms of the batting performance. So, you know, to go on and lose the game is very tough for them, and, you know, going to have a long day trying to lift their spirits and get them ready for tomorrow's semi-final.
Immaculate Nachisui anchored the innings with a steady knock, supported by Rita Musamali's brisk 36 off, 29 balls.
Off. Calls for a big cut shot, Mrs. Zita.
Though Uganda's middle order showed promise, Rwanda's disciplined bowling unit, led by Henrietta Ishimwe, prevented Uganda from accelerating in the death overs.
Unfortunately, when we came out to bowl, we didn't do so well. We bowled both sides of the wicket and we got punished. I thought Rwanda batted really well. They came out aggressive, especially in the power play, and got a good start. And we took too long to adjust as a bowling side.
The team now settles for a second place on the log with 12 points, behind Rwanda, who lead with 14. Uganda will now face Zimbabwe in a semi-final clash at the Gahanga Cricket Main Oval tomorrow, while Rwanda will play against Tanzania for a final clash. Regina Naluja, NTV Sport.
Not anyone's catch.
We now talk matters athletics. The 4th edition of this year's Tusker Light Rwenzori Marathon has been launched, and organizers expect the participation of over 6,000 runners, including both local and international athletes. The event, which will take place on the 23rd of August, will also embrace eco-conscious efforts such as sustainable water solutions and recycling zones.
Organizers of this year's Rwenzori Marathon will focus on promoting talent identification and development, healthy living, climate change awareness, and year-round tourism as the annual event takes center stage in Kasese district on 23rd August. The event, which attracted 4,000 runners last year, half of the organization Kesa explains the impact of the marathon towards athletes.
We went and picked runners from Kapchora. One of the runners that won the Tusker Rwenzori Marathon had never done the marathon. The guy that won called Abel Chiringat. He won 3,000 shillings, $3,000 about. He did not even have $3 in his pocket. He was picked by Adidas because Adidas was following us online. And he was taken to Portugal for the first time and went to Portugal Marathon in November. He went to India, he became number 6. 2-3 weeks ago, he won Morocco Marathon.
Title sponsors Tusker Light have commended the marathon's contribution to the economic growth of the country.
We have quite a number of people coming from across the world, and once they come, they won't only run, they're going to leave some money in our economy. There's going to be a lot of tourism. It's also growing Kasese as a district, and also shining a positive light. So that's something that's really integral to UPL, growing, but also growing Uganda as well.
The State Minister of Tourism, Martin Mugara, noted the marathon's contribution towards the infrastructure development in Kasese and the surrounding areas.
When we did the first edition of the Mount Rwenzori Marathon, if you remember how Kasese looked like, the infrastructure, the roads, just a month ago, we were there with His Excellency launching the infrastructure in Kasese. 53 billion Uganda shillings just into the road network within the Kasese town. We're going to find a different kind of environment.
The marathon, which has attracted over 8,000 runners since its inception, is this year attracting interest from 33 different nationalities. Noah Walakira, NTV Sport.
Well, that's it for NTV Tonight. Thank you very much for your company this entire week. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko, Susan Mujananda on sign language. Coming up is NTV on the spot. Do join us shortly as we have conversations on the national budget 2025-2026.